I'm Cori Crenshaw.
I'm Richie Flores.
And this is Sporty with Cori and Richie Suave.
Florida, center field. The Diamondbacks are world champions.
Down is the motion man. Little flip to Fitzgerald. He scores. And the Cardinals win an amazing game.
Mikhail Bucker with a chance. He walks in. He scores. Mikhail Bucker for the second straight game is the hero.
Yes, indeed. It is a pleasure to be with you on the first ever edition of Sporty with Cori and Richie Suave. I am Richie Suave, and I am joined, of course, as always, by Cori Crenshaw. A pleasure to be with you as always, Cori.
It's always been a pleasure to work with you, Richie. I mean, starting out at ASU and then covering ASU hockey and then going to writing and then doing Howlin' Hockey podcast to this. I mean, it's a natural progression for our friendship.
I absolutely agree. I'm so proud that we are getting this off the ground. I hope you guys are checking us out at home on YouTube, checking us out on Twitter as well. And Cori, of course, you can find me. You can listen to me 7 to 9 weeknights on Fox Sports 910 as part of the Freaks. We have a blast on that show. But Cori, you actually have some experience in the sportsmen as well. You've worked for both the Coyotes and the Diamondbacks.
Yes, I've been, instead of on this side, I've been inside of all of it, down in the dungeons of each of the teams. And so, you know, it's nice to be able to have that insight and be able to bring it out to everyone and be able to see the teams honestly from a whole different level and perspective that I ever thought I would be seeing them in. So it's great to have had that experience and be able to come back to the heart and soul of where I started.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to be getting to a lot on this first edition coming up in the show. We're going to be getting into the Arizona Diamondbacks and their start, third in the National League West, doing better than really any of us could have imagined. We're also going to get into the Stanley Cup Final just a little bit. We're going to talk about the fans in Nashville and Smashville and how that maybe could be a little bit of a blueprint for Arizona Coyotes fans. And we also are going to debut a couple of brand new segments as well. We're going to do them every week. We're going to start with Richie's Dick of the Week, which I'm going to shout out a player, an athlete, a broadcaster that has had a terrible week that I dislike, that I think should probably shut their trap. And then you also have what we're going to wrap the show with every week, which is Cori's Corner.
I mean, on our podcast, it was, what was it, Cranky Cori or something like that?
I think we called it Cori's Cranky Corner.
Well, we took out the cranky because it made me sound like some old woman, so I was not too fond of that one. But now we're doing it, and it's starting to basically be a transition from my initial one that I did in our podcast, where I will either explain something that I feel is being not so portrayed well in sports, or I will be complaining about things such as on the podcast, I used to complain about people wearing different sports or different sports teams to a game that their team is not in. If you're going to a Coyotes game and a Blackhawks game, do not wear a Red Wings jersey. It just looks weird.
See, I'm a little bit leisurely when it comes to that. Like I don't really mind it at all. I mean, it's a jersey. Like if I go to a Coyotes game, or excuse me, not a Coyotes game, but if I go to like a Red Wings and San Jose Sharks game in San Jose, I don't have a San Jose Sharks or Detroit Red Wings jersey or a cap, and I don't want to spend any money on teams I don't really like, but I just want to see the Shark Tank, right? I'm going to wear my Tobias Reeder Coyotes jersey because it's the only hockey-related thing I actually have.
I get that, but at the same time, I feel like you kind of stand out like a sore thumb because it's kind of like, what are you doing here? When I went to Colorado, I bought a Colorado Avalanche hat just so that way I could kind of root for it, but I did wear my ASU. I know there's a U of A thing in the background there, but we are Cronkite grads, so we root Devils.
The Devils.
But I still bought a hat just because I felt like you're there to root for one team or the other. I mean, you could be going, I really wanted to go working DBTV for the Diamondbacks. I really wanted to see what their screen's like. That thing is amazing. I mean, amazing. I can't even tell you how great that giant screen is. You could probably watch that and never actually look at the ice. That was just side note. I had to put that in there because it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen as a production nerd.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, if you're following us, you should probably check us out on all the social media sites as well. We forgot to mention that. So, Cori, where can the people find you on Twitter?
I am, as we used to say in our podcast, at Cori Nicole with 2 E's. Not 1 E, but 2 E's because 1 E was taken.
Too slow to get a hold of your own Twitter, of the Cori Nicole Twitter account.
Yeah, apparently, I don't know why. My name is spelled Cori, so, not many people spell it that way, and not many girls are named Cori. Most of them spell it with a K, but apparently Cori Nicole was somehow taken, and someone has my first and middle name out there. So if you happen to be a viewer, let me know so I know which one is Cori Nicole, who took the one with 1 E because I want it.
Cori's coming for you at Cori Nicole with 1 E if you're listening to us.
Exactly. And then yours?
Mine, you can follow me on Twitter at rflores91. I always spew my hot takes there about whether it be, of course, my favorite TV show, Arrow, or, of course, what's going on in the sports world, and, of course, my love for Tobias Reeder constantly, all the time.
It has become an obsession. I'm not going to lie.
At some point when we get into the Coyotes season coming up and we get into training camp, we're going to spend a whole hour of the show just talking about Tobias Reeder. By the way, he's hurt right now. He'll be back ready for training camp. But we can also follow the show on Twitter as well. Where can people find the show on Twitter?
If I am correct, it is at Cori_Richie show.
Yes, it is. So we both kind of run that account together, and we share our takes. We share funny GIFs, so you can follow us on there.
Yeah, there's some of them that we have that are general, that just have a general fact or something. But if it's opinion, we'll let you know. Underneath, we'll put our Twitter handle to see who exactly has that opinion. So that way, if Richie has an opinion that you don't agree with, you can yell at Richie instead of me.
A lot coming up in the show, of course, Cori. But coming up here in just a few moments, we're going to get to one of my favorite. We're going to debut a brand new segment, correct?
Coming up next, Richie and I weigh in on the D-backs attendance issues and slam-a-lam-a-ding-dong, as Richie likes to call him. But first, it's time for Richie's Dick of the Week.
Thank you very much, Cori. Yes, indeed. It is time for what's going to be my favorite segment of the show. It is time to hand out my Dick of the Week. That's right. Every week on the show, I'm going to give out an award to somebody who I think is being a complete douchebag and a dick, whether they be an athlete, whether they be a broadcaster, whether they be a coach, a manager, whatever. And this week, it is a pretty simple and easy winner. It's Mike Milbury. You can see him on NBCSN. He does the pre- and post-game show for NBC Sports during their hockey coverage. And earlier this week, he royally pissed me off with something he said. So during the Stanley Cup Final, P.K. Subban and Sidney Crosby got into an altercation on the ice, and they had each other basically in a headlock in a way on the ice in a little bit of a scuffle. Sidney Crosby, the captain of the Pittsburgh Penguins, then proceeded to slam P.K. Subban's head into the ice multiple times. And then, during the intermission, they only got minor penalties on that, by the way, but then during the intermission, Mike Milbury had the balls to come on TV and say that P.K. Subban deserved it. That he deserved to have his head smashed into the ice multiple times. And for reason why? Well, I honestly think it's a pretty simple answer. Mike Milbury, I honestly believe, should be kicked off of NBCSN. I think what he said was racist. I think what he said was completely uncalled for. And I thought it was an absolutely ridiculous statement for Mike Milbury to make. I don't know why the douchebag is still on TV. He's an awful, awful guy. Back in the day when he was with the Boston Bruins, he went into the stands and beat the crap out of some fans. So NBCSN, to have Mike Milbury on your broadcast is absolutely ridiculous. And by the way, in the past, Mike Milbury has also called P.K. Subban a clown. Mike Milbury, you are indeed my Dick of the Week.
Thank you for your Dick of the Week, Richie. That was awesome. I completely agree with the fact that it was uncalled for, and the fact that he deserved it is definitely uncalled for, and something should be done. And I don't know if he should be technically kicked off or suspended, but something needs to be done so he knows that it's not right to be doing these type of things. But we can't stick with all the dicks all the time. So we've got to start going into some local stuff like our D-backs. They've had a great season, and it's been a huge turnaround since Torey Lovullo's come. So what do you think has caused this?
Well, I think it's Cori, it starts with Torey Lovullo. His leadership in the clubhouse is completely different from anything we saw from the previous regime under Chip Hale and Dave Stewart, the GM, and Tony La Russa as well. There's just a feeling around this team this year, Cori, of it's more of a familial type atmosphere. These guys are having fun this year, which you can tell last year they were not having. And Torey Lovullo, what he's really good at, Cori, is he's really good at communication. He's really good at being able to constantly talk to his players, understand what they want, and the players know what is expected from Torey Lovullo. Torey came over from the Boston Red Sox. He spent a lot of time there. He was the bench coach to John Farrell there. He was an interim manager as well while John Farrell was having his health issues. When they first hired Torey, I was like, all right, he's never really had any managerial experience. I wasn't sure quite to expect, but 65 games-ish into the season, he has completely impressed me with how he's handled himself on the bench for the Arizona Diamondbacks. This was a great hire. And I think right now, as far as I'm concerned, he is probably the front runner for Manager of the Year in Major League Baseball. He's done a terrific job.
I have to agree. It's been a huge turnaround, and I'm so glad that you mentioned how well that they've been doing in the clubhouse and with their spirit, because please tell me you watched the game where Chris Owings was playing David Peralta's position, and he came up with that song. I know everyone's going to make fun of me for singing it, but like, come on, ride that train and ride it. When he came up and everyone's in the dugout doing the freight train
yes.
symbol, I was dying laughing. I thought it was the greatest thing. That's some creativity and some really good teamwork, and I'm so glad that they're able to bring that in this year. And I agree with you on the way that Torey has turned everything around, and he's working with his players. Jake Lamb has had a very hard time with left-handed hitters, or left-handed pitchers. Sorry about that. He's a left-handed hitter. But so he's been trying to help him out, and he's been telling him, you know, I understand this is a problem of yours. We're going to work on it, and we're going to make you come to a point where you can be just as good with lefties as you are with righties. And he's improving. It might be slow, but it's still a process. And he's not sitting him like he was last year. That's the problem, is every time there was a left-handed pitcher, he would get sat. And you kind of come to a point where you are going, okay, how is he ever going to get better, Chip Hale, if he's never actually facing these pitchers? And now that he's actually facing them and they're working with him, he's getting better. So that idea and that type of commitment that he has to his players is far surpassing. I
agree. And a couple stats, Cori, because you mentioned it, his disparity between facing right-handed pitchers and facing left-handed pitchers is humongous. So coming into Sunday, these are the numbers against right-handed pitchers for Jake Lamb. He's got a .329 batting average, got a .422 on-base percentage, and he's hit 14 home runs against right-handed pitchers. But against lefties, like you said, that's the problem. He's only hitting 138. He's got an on-base of 231, and he's only hit 2 home runs. That's his biggest issue. And if he can fix that, this guy is, going to turn into like one of your elite players in the game. And it's a shame to me, Cori, that he's not in the top 5 among National League third basemen in all-star voting.
Well, I mean, he's number 1 in the MLB for RBIs. He has, I think it was 56 going in today. Excuse us. There's a game going on against Milwaukee, which was like 4-0 or something last time I saw. And, but so stats may change, but it was 57, I think, with the addition of today's RBI. And that's amazing. Like, this guy has become one of the front runners of this team. There are people holding signs that are saying, I heart Lamb. There's people bringing little baby lambs in. And there are people that are just rallying behind him. And I've never seen in D-backs baseball people that are rallying behind people other than Gonzo and Goldie. This is going to be a new face that people can really appreciate on this team. And he knows that that's a problem that he needs to fix, and he's going to. And he said, obviously, I need to make some adjustments, but I think a lot of guys would say the same thing. You naturally see righties more growing up in the minors and in the big leagues. So, he's just used to those righties. He'll get used to lefties eventually, and he's going to be a star not only within this team, but I think within the MLB.
I really hope so. He's a fun player to watch, and that's another thing I've been noticing too is just the likability of this team. There's a lot of likable guys in that locker room, and I think it starts really to me with a guy like Archie Bradley. He's a guy who has changed roles this season. He used to be that starting pitcher. He was drafted in the top 10 of his draft year, and so he's switching roles to the bullpen, and that's got to be hard on him, but he's taking advantage of it. He's having a terrific season, but you can tell he's having fun. He's grown out the massive beard that is ridiculous and reminds me of Brian Wilson a lot, former San Francisco Giant. It starts with him, Fernando Rodney. You can tell he's having fun on the mound because he has his shooting the arrow every time he gets a save and gets the Diamondbacks a victory. This is a likable team. Paul Goldschmidt, Chris Owings, Robbie Ray. I'm just super glad that I hope fans start showing up to the ballpark too. I mean, I don't think we have time to get into the attendance woes, but I'm just happy that this team is likable again, this team is good again, and this team is going to be fun to watch the rest of the season.
For what you're talking about with the attendance woes, attendance is down, and that I can't understand with the fact of how likable they are. And this is a young team. Everyone on this team, you're mentioning Archie Bradley, and he is, I think, around 24. And they all came into this team together so young. The fact that they are mature enough to know how to have fun, but then get to the field and still be, okay, we're serious. And I've heard Jake mention this before because Jake and Archie live together. Mm-hmm. So they will goof around and they have very similar personalities, according to him. But when they get to the field, it's all business. Mm-hmm. They're very serious. And you can definitely tell that them being at home is where they feel the greatest. They have a 25-9 home record. That's amazing. And it hasn't been that way in a long time. The road record is 13-7. So it's a little bit more even. It's not as good, but you have to admit they're wonderful at home. I mean, I went to the Mother's Day game and I brought my wonderful mother with me, and I saw 2 home runs, I think, from Goldie that day, and one of them almost hit DBTV. There's the most amount of liveliness in Chase Field that I've seen in a long time, and I don't understand why fans won't come out and be a part of that because it is so much fun.
Yeah, I hope. I think there's a problem with the city in terms of showing up a lot of times to witness their teams. The Coyotes have had their attendance woes. The Suns haven't been drawing well in the last couple seasons since they've gotten out of the playoffs. But I think in years past we saw when the Diamondbacks have gone on runs in 2011, in 2007, 2002, 2001. They'll start wrapping their arms around this team and start showing up to the ballpark when we start talking pennant, which basically is in September.
Which it's great that they're going to be coming out at that time, but at the same time, when you have 162 games in a season, you're going to need fans to come out for those regular season games. How are those players going to be amped up every game if they don't have any fans coming to show their appreciation for their good play? But that is something we'll have to see later on, and hopefully we can keep the seasons rolling well as they have this season. And don't we have another new segment coming up? Yeah, we do. We're going to get Diamondbacks, of course, throughout this summer. Plenty to come on that front. But coming up next, Smashville, a blueprint for Phoenix? We're going to get into that in just a second. But first, it is time for another featured segment on the show, Corey. It's time for the Tired Sports Debate of the Week. And, of course, this week, we are just freaking sick and tired of the LeBron MJ talk. Oh my gosh, yes. I was stuck sitting there watching all of the different shows talking about whether LeBron was number one in the world or not. It got so tired so quickly. The thing is, you can't compare any of the things that are going on right now to any of the things in the past. That's what we had to talk about the other night, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's my biggest problem with it, is comparing eras to me is ridiculous, because we'll never know how LeBron James is going to play up against Michael Jordan. We never saw it. I think we saw it for maybe one season. I think Michael Jordan's last season was actually LeBron's first, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And it's annoying because we can't talk about something that we don't know, we're never going to see. And so, especially like Cori, you and I, we're both millennials. We were both born in, the early to mid 90s. We never got to see Michael Jordan play in his prime. So I can't sit here and talk about, I still think Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time, but I can't talk about this debate and having not really seen and remembered Michael Jordan in his prime. I think that's the hardest part for me.
And not to mention, basketball has changed so much. As a person who doesn't watch that immense amount of basketball, I still know how stacked some of these teams are. You look at Golden State, and they are so stacked. Everyone was mad about Kevin Durant coming over because the team was already stacked as it was. It kind of seemed like a cheap move. As a person from the outside, again, I don't particularly know 100%, so don't quote me on it, but I think it was probably a cheap move. You knew that they were going to win a championship, so you went there. That's kind of what it looked like. But you have someone like LeBron playing against a team that is so stacked that the odds are against him, and he's averaging a triple-double a game?
Triple-double, yeah.
And you can only do so much as a single person, so how are you going to compare that to things that were done when the teams were much more evenly spaced out? I just don't think that this is a comparison that we can really make, and the fact that people are literally pulling at straws just to try and make this comparison is so tired, and I'm so over it.
I'm sick of it, which is why we're going to stop talking about it. How about that?
Sounds good to me.
All right, let's move on, Cori, into something that we actually love and we are very passionate about, which is the Stanley Cup Final. So we're not going to get into too much of what's been going on the ice. We're going to save that to next week. Again, we're taping this on a Sunday afternoon. We're actually taping right before Game 6 happens in the city of Smashville in Nashville, Tennessee, and that's what we want to talk about, Cori. We want to talk about the fans in Nashville and how amazing that atmosphere is and how fun it is to even just watch the games on TV. And I want to get your opinion. I'll get mine as well. Is the Nashville blueprint of how they built their fan base and what they do there in Nashville, is that a blueprint for what can happen here in Arizona?
I mean, it could be in the sense that they're not an original. So, they are a blueprint in the fact that they are one of these side ones like we are. But I just feel like they only have two teams. They have the Titans and they have the Predators. It's not like here, I wrote it down somewhere. We have the Big Four. We have soccer, arena football, WNBA. We've got minor leagues. We've got NAS for basketball, Roadrunners for hockey. I'm sure there's something I'm missing in there, but that's a lot of different games and a bunch of different teams that this state can choose from. So how are you going to know for sure that they're going to choose your team, and especially when there's multiple games going on a certain night? And that's not a problem that they have because of the fact that they only have two teams. That's going to be my biggest issue with this whole thing. I mean, technically, Nashville was number 20, I think. Yes, they were number 20 in NHL attendance in the 2016-2017 season, whereas our Arizona Coyotes were a wonderful 29 out of 30. So, I mean, given they are 9 spots above us, but I mean, I do have to respect the fact that they did so good when it came to all the people coming, throwing catfish on the ice. What did he got fined? The guy who came to Pittsburgh?
He almost got thrown in jail for it, which they decided to drop those charges, which is just awful, the fact that they charged a guy because he just was having fun and threw a catfish on the ice, but I digress.
And my parents were asking me the other day why there were people pouring beer down catfish's throats. Wait, catfish, I don't know which one's a plural. But they were asking me why that happened. And now that ideal and that whole type of fan base is coming to the light of all these people that they never knew was there before. We were talking about it earlier. There's 100% rate that they have people coming to there. So is it the fact that they have a lot of fans, or is it the fact that they just don't have enough of room in their arena? Like, it's there's a lot of things that play into this.
Yeah, I have to disagree with you on this, because I honestly think watching Nashville, I think that is the shining star of what hockey in the desert can be. Look, Nashville was an expansion team. They came in the early 2000s, and it took a while for them to kind of build a fan base there. It took a while for them to start winning. And once they started winning, and they started doing so consistently about 4 or 5 years ago, people started showing up. They've been, 98% plus capacity during the regular season for the last 5 seasons, and that's when they've been making these runs. That's when they've made it to the playoffs and failed a couple of times, but they still had that fan support because they were winning. And Corey, we saw a blueprint here for what hockey can be, and we both witnessed it personally. We both saw the Coyotes make their runs in the Stanley Cup playoffs for 3 years in a row under the first 3 seasons of Dave Tippett. We saw what that building was like, what Gila River Arena was like during the Western Conference Final, during the playoffs against the Nashville Predators, which was one of my favorite moments in Coyotes history, is being in that stadium in a whiteout against the Nashville Predators and having 17,000 people all dressed in white during a whiteout. It was amazing, and at the time, too, as well, Corey, and you remember this, the city itself, that was the only thing in town. It was the best thing in town. The Diamondbacks were still in the middle of their season. They hadn't really gotten it going at that point. The Cardinals were terrible. The Suns were missing the playoffs as well. And so if the Coyotes just win, I think they'll get fans to show up. And I think once they start doing that, they can start building a culture here of their own traditions, much like Nashville.
However, that 2011-2012 season where they lost in the third round, they still had an average per game of 12,421 people that were coming in to each of these games. It's not like our attendance was amazing. I mean, this year we had 13,095. I mean, is it really the fact that we're not winning, or is it the fact that where they're located is too far away for people to drive, especially when they have so many games on a weekday?
I've never understood that argument at all. I think it's total BS, because people drive to their freaking Arizona Cardinals games every week and fill out a 70,000 seat stadium. So why can't you go 10 times a season to a Coyotes game on the weekend and sell that building out? We saw it in the playoffs. People drove. They didn't care that it was 45-minute, an hour and a half drive for them to see their team play in the playoffs. I don't understand that argument, but I do agree that they do need a new arena. Glendale's not going to work out, but that's a conversation for another day. But to say that the only reason it's not happening is because of where the stadium is I just don't get it. I don't. It's winning. If the team wins, people will show up. Simple as that.
I mean, Nashville also has country singers, too. You got to throw that into the mix.
They also stole Dierks Bentley, who was a Phoenix native, and he went and was a traitor and showed up in Nashville and sang the national anthem during the Stanley Cup Final.
So are you calling out Dierks Bentley?
Yes, I am. Dierks, if you're willing to come on the show and defend yourself, please do. I'd like to hear from you.
Maybe we'll see him at his own Whiskey Row sometime, and we'll have to bring that up to him. But for right now, we're going to have to go to another break. And when we do it, we'll be going to my corner. All right, time for my first edition of Cori's Corner. So this time, we're going to get a little bit intimate and talk about you. Yes, you. Are you a bandwagon fan? Are you a temporary fan? This is the problem that everyone has been having lately. They've been talking about, oh, you're a bandwagon fan because you're a Cavs fan right now, or you're a bandwagon fan because you're a Golden State fan right now, or Pens, Preds, whatever. There's a huge difference between the two. If you are a bandwagon fan, you will go out and you will buy the hat, the jersey. You'll say that your favorite player is on that team, and you will do everything you can to say that, yes, I am a part of that team, and that team is a part of me. But that's not the truth, and you really need to just stick to a team, whether they win or lose, be loyal. However, a temporary fan is someone who their team is already out. There's no really point, and they're still loyal to their team, and they'll always be rooting for that team. But in the situation where they're not playing anymore, they're going to root for one of the teams that they like better at the end. I'm not a big Penguins fan, but I admire everything that is going on in Nashville right now, and I love Carrie Underwood. Let's put that as a side note. And so you can't go against Mike Fisher. But I am a temporary fan. I am a temporary fan of the Predators. No, don't call me a bandwagon fan, because I'm not. When it comes to regular season again, I'll still be rooting for my Coyotes. But for the moment being, I will be a Predator fan. I will not go out and buy all of their stuff. I will not own them and say that we are a part of each other, because we're not. But I will, for the time being, root for them. So don't ever call a temporary fan a bandwagon fan, because they're not. They don't deserve that insult. Thank you for listening to Cori's Corner and listening to Sporty with Cori and Richie Suave. And as Ritchie would say, good night and good sports.